If there's one thing every jungler dreams of, it's hearing those magical words, jungle diff, from your team and the enemy team. In Season 15, you're gonna hear a lot of that because people think we're all about fighting, no more farming, and it's all a fiesta of objectives and weird add-to-can monster snacks. Now, even if you would prefer to hear jungle diff over winning, I think it's good if we can do both. But Season 15 is a bit confusing, so in this video I will give you the 5 steps to become a jungle god in this new meta, and basically tell you how to deal with feats of strength, bad laners, and everything you need to climb. And the first thing is going to be what I call gaps of tempo. Now, to explain what this means, we need to consider feats of strength. How do we actually adapt our game plan, our pathing direction, and our early game strategies to play around this? First and foremost, it is not about, hey, you need to get this or you win. Far from the truth. It's about understanding where to cut the map, cut your sequencing, and playing to the strength of your win conditions. Now that, of course, should be yourself, but sometimes you will require a laner's help. Look at this high elo Wukong chasing around a proxy Singed just to get first blood, just so we can start stacking feats. From the outset, I want all of you to accept that first blood is completely and utterly out of your control. It's gone. So if that is already gone and you assume most likely you won't get it, sometimes you will, how then do we get 3 objectives and first turret while also positioning ourselves to play around the winning lane? Here's the thing, people are now telling you, hey, you can't full clear as a jungler. That smells worse than a gigantic dump made by the Grump. Because, my friends, you can full clear. All it is, path in the direction of the lane that you think you can most likely gank based upon CC, scaling, who's gonna push, and of course what champion you might be. And hey, if you want to climb like Bone Void in Season 15, you absolutely must head to Virkayu.gg. Not only do I have a free jungle improvement resource, I also have a dedicated program with jungle video courses, jungle coaching classes, a jungle VOD library. Courses will be prepped for Season 15 as soon as the changes are stable. All the fundamentals you need for right now are available in a ridiculous amount of hours for content tailored for your MMR so you can climb to reach your peak rank, as we saw from all of those people hitting their peak dreams in Season 14 as fast as possible. So to hit your peak rank in Season 15 and jungle diff every game you play, head to the link in the description below or to Virkayu.gg. If you wish to do a 3 camper into an action, into a gank, to try and get that first blood, to actually cut off the enemy jungler, guess what? You can do that. None of that has changed. What changes, my friends, is what do we do after that first clear? For example, you can do the classic clean 6 clear. This basically says you start raptors or wolves, you do a full sequence, you take a scuttle crab, or you give it up, you do another scuttle crab, or you give it up, and then you can retake those wolves or raptors, those grumps or krugs, and go back to base. This allows you to perfectly set up for a read on the grubs or the dragon. I advise most people to do this, especially in non-ganking environments. But here's why tracking and extrapolation, something I will explain, are the things that are going to allow you to get feats of strength. Look at this Valley Baba game. I said, hey, you know what? Weird things have happened. I've done a full clear. I've made a gank attempt. Why don't I just stay out and do the dragon? I know I can because I got the lane prior up, and I know I can solo it before basing. Also, I know the enemy jungler is on the other side. And that is truly why the first thing here is finding the gaps in tempo. But if you can't solo the dragon, don't solo the dragon, right? You can go back to base, buy, contest the grubs, and so on. The whole reason for having a dedicated early game strategy, whether it's your 3 camp gank, whether it's your full clear and base, is understanding what is the first objective I'm syncing up towards. Here you can see a Fiddlesticks doing exactly what I said. The enemy Evelyn decides to do the second full clear. Despite having a hardcore winning Irelia vs Mundo top lane, she goes back to base to the bottom side. She loses the ability to contest and snack those grubs. Remember, if you have first blood, all you gotta do is secure first 3 objectives, maybe push that turret down. But getting grubs allows you to push for the first turret. So ultimately, is all of this stress thinking about feats of strength worth it? Hell no, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you have 6,000 gold and they have 8,000 gold, guess what? Even if you have feats of strength, you don't get to 750 for free. You still only have 6,000 gold to spend. If they get the feats of strength, and you have the same amount of gold, guess what? You still have the same amount of gold. All it does is give them a moment in time after 2 legendary items where they can actually purchase a small little spike for a fight that they're gonna have. Be aware of this, consolidate this, play around it. It's not the end of the world if you don't get it, but it is nice to have. Most people will buy the boots at the expense of good and regular items and cost themselves that spike anyway. So what you want to look for, as always, my friends, is look for that gap in tempo where you can cut in to do a dragon. We can cut in to do the grubs, or yes, in this particular meta, where you can cut from the grubs directly to the dragon, or from the dragon directly to the grubs. You can see from this Viego doing exactly that. You can see from the Zyra doing exactly that. And that's because the second thing is the most important. Fighting plus objective control and what it means for you. We have sequencing, right? Your camps, your rotations. If you see a gank, you rotate to a gank. Look at this fiddle again. Do the sequencing down. See some stuff in the mid lane. It says, ha ha ha, time for me to rotate with the ult. Beautiful. But now you will notice a lot of the gameplay channel's discussion and high elo VOD review really high kill participation from any jungler who is 1v9ing. That means that answering map action is more important in Season 15, but it still has to be done in an intelligent way. So look for your F keys, look to leave your camps to rotate to fights, look to tell your team, hey, can we fight for this objective to get it? All Feats of Strength has done has focused teams and junglers on intelligent fighting in crucial moments. If you have the numbers, go fight, kill them all, take the grubs. If you don't have the numbers as usual, just give them up. It is absolutely okay to swap and do something else. That hasn't changed. But what I've noticed for myself and I've noticed from the people I've played and coached with, it's the following. I have much more often, instead of falling back to camps after doing an objective after winning a fight, I'm really looking at rotating to the next PvP play. Again, in an intelligent way. Okay, I do the dragon, I cut across mid lane, I see a top lane gank I can do, I'm gonna do it. I'm always looking to play around my team, play around the numbers. If we have feats of strength with bonus gold advantage, of course, I'm going to use it. But I also understand as a jungler that when my laners are a bit more spicy, a bit more antsy, they want to go for these fights through misconception or misunderstanding, doesn't matter. I have to be there with them. I have to play around my team to a large degree. So, in order to do this, in order to actually control the objectives, ideally we want to get 2 first grub pits and maybe a dragon for the 3. Most likely you're going to have to give up 1. All it does is set you up for a good fight for the next one. And that's why the third thing is maximizing experience to achieve the Atakan. All right, this is the difference here. Normally we just maximize experience, come out of the mid game at 14, use a herald, punch some plates, and then we wait for Baron. Now though, it's very okay to understand, hey, even if the enemy jungler is getting a gank of level 3, a gank of level 4, a gank of level 5, cleaning up your bot lane, you're tracking and understanding what camps are available, where he's going to go next. This will allow you to maximize your experience as we've spoken about. That means focusing on the camps that have the highest level and not the level 1 camps. If he has level 1 camps on the top side, let him have them. Control your own sequence. Make sure you end up 3 levels above the enemy jungler because they're fighting a lot, but not well, and they're not maximizing their experience. That's the benefit of good jungling. Control your sequence, play around your rotations, fight for the objectives you can fight for, and then, of course, use that to dive a top lane to gank a lane and shove. You're still counter jungling when you can counter jungle. Don't feel like you need to always rotate to every fight. If there's a fight bottom lane and you can do something top lane, do it. Equal and opposite still is good. But a lot of the times I'm seeing junglers kind of overreact to fights, overreact to grub takes and dragon takes. Yeah, I mentioned the Volibear sneaking a dragon there, but that made sense. It was a gap in tempo, he could do it. Alright, the enemy jungler shows bot lane, then you have a gap in tempo, you can do the grubs and maybe counter jungle and dive top lane and then push that turret. Becoming a jungle god in Season 15 is really and truly about bringing all of the jungle fundamentals that you know under one umbrella of balance. We will investigate whether it's maybe better to be ganking, farming, or fighting. For that, we really do need to look at great examples. But it does mean, unfortunately, you have to look a little bit more for those fights and ganks. But again, I don't want you to stress them and overforce them, all within the flow of controlling your own experience in counter jungling. There is a stat that my entire jungle club knows about, and everybody our coach knows about, and most of you on YouTube know about, that I've pushed for many years as a differentiating factor between a good jungler and a bad jungler. You can be 12-0, you can have 3 objectives, but if you do 0 damage to turrets, you're gonna lose. So to wrap up the feat of strength focus here, hey, if we give it first blood, we take first blood, who cares? If we focus on our sequencing, maximizing experience, and getting those objectives, you should always be in a position to get 3 out of 4, maybe the first 3, but ideally 3 out of 4, definitely 3 out of 5. But what bad junglers are doing, they are falling back to bad habits. Maybe counter jungling, you think that's good, but it's aggressive and you die. Maybe falling back to your camps and chilling and just sequencing afterwards. Then you notice that they got feats of strength by pushing turrets. In your mind, in your team's mind, oh, we lost feats of strength, that sucks. In my mind, I'm saying, if you just simply did what we've been practicing for years, which is focus on hitting turrets, you'd actually have the feats of strength, incidentally, almost all the time. After you get those objectives, after you prime your lanes through your pressures and ganks, as you always have to do, after you deny the enemy jungler the ability to kill you and take your sequencing with measured aggression, get into a lane, start hitting for plates, just like we always have done. Get in a lane, gank it, and push to kill it. Because turrets have weaker resistances, yeah, they do more damage, but because they have weaker resistances, you can have no issue and no stress rinsing them really quickly. Give your team the grubs, at least 1 pit if you can. And I really want you to focus on this. 14, 15, 60 minutes, you and your ass are in the lanes, hitting turrets after a gank, finishing that first turret for your team. Ideally, you can do before, but really think about doing it now because the Herald at 16 is the next thing you're going to have to think about, and you really want to be in a great position to spike for those next moments. All I can tell you is if you go and look at your match history and you see the losses, you will see, hey, I did 0 damage to turrets, enemy jungler did 2,000-3,000, I lost. You might even notice that you could be the only one with 0 turret damage. This happens a lot in coaching, it happens a lot in VOD reviews when I look at a variety of MMRs, even from Master Tier, and it's like, well, they looked great, but they didn't actually push the map, that's the point. And the reason why that's so important for number 5 here is dynamic pressure play. A lot of this was about reframing our game plans and feats of strength. And now you've learned that feats of strength is simply a name applied to things you should be doing anyway. Alright, you understand that? Good. Because now at 60 minutes the Herald spawns, and at 20 minutes the Atakan spawns. Your map hasn't changed in terms of macro. You have more time to get the second grubs and to get the Herald, but the time from 16 to Baron has really condensed and is quite stressful. Apart from, ensuring that you're doing those rose petals and picking them up whenever you see them, position the map in a great way that you can use the Herald around you Atakan. You can use the Herald to push the map forward so that you can fall back to it and do it as a team. Begin to really stress to yourself and your team how to set up and prep the Atakan like a mini Baron. It isn't, but it is. What you've seen a lot of and what you're seeing clips of here is just long, drawn-out, painful fights where some people started too soon, they get contested, they die, they started again, enemy team, and then you rotate back over after spawning, and it keeps going for like 2-3 minutes, no golden experience has been taken. It's okay to give it up. It's okay to just farm and do something else. Sometimes you're gonna lose the Atakan, it's okay, it's not the end of the game. It sucks, but it's not the end of the game. Why? Because if you have objective control, 25% of 0 is 0. If you have been using all of the early game strategies in terms of your tracking and your rotations that have those high kill participation metrics and the high damage metrics that you require, 99% of the time you're gonna have a ruinous Atakan. You want to position your team in a way that if you can do it at 20, you do it at 20. And the way you do it is the same way you would set up for potentially doing Baron at 27 minutes. Just do it at 20 minutes. But most of the time what I'm seeing is people actually forget it exists, wander around farming, not actually doing anything, and then what happens is you use a Herald for regular play, you overcommit, you don't set it up properly, a massive fight generates, you either win or you lose, they get Atakan, maybe they get a Baron from it, and the game becomes really one-sided after that point because Baron gives them 25% AD and AP. You really want to stress at this stage, if they have Atakan, you cannot give away the Baron. So your priorities will shift in a dynamic way from the 20-minute mark onward. Best advice is always the same advice when it comes to these big monsters. Get in their jungle, push the waves up, make sure you've done a lot of turret damage, set division, begin. It's not something you really want to turn on, so if you can actually hit a pick and actually force a fight beforehand and then snack it, good. However, you can actually duo it with 2 Fed members. So if they're tracking and fighting somewhere else, which a lot of people are doing, don't be afraid to say, yo, ADC, let's go ahead and do it. Did it with a Kaiser or whoever it was when I was Zyra yesterday. And then as always, the dynamic nature of things, don't forget to go gardening afterwards. A lot of plants, pick them up, huge adaptive force. At this particular stage, jungler, you have now reached a spike you never thought possible in terms of the stats that you have. And there's a lot more pressure for you to actually use the Atakan's damage boost to whatever objectives you secured to get that Baron into position. There is a very systemic 1, 2, 3 punch when it comes to Herald, Atakan, Baron. And as long as you are going through those progressions correctly of sequence, push, play around my team, good rotational power, see a fight we can win, do it, see a fight we can't win, give it up, you will notice you're fighting a lot more in the mid game, you have a lot more activity. This feels stressful to junglers who are too passive in the early game and don't reach their item spikes and feel like they're not really involved. The junglers who do every step in this video all of a sudden will have an easy time doing these progressions because they feel ready and they feel deeply involved and ingrained in the game state. This is something junglers have struggled to feel in the past, but with this particular meta, what Feats of Strength does is it just helps you reframe your early game and give you mini missions to try and accomplish. Now you have incentive to actually do turret damage. Now you have incentive to give up an objective and take another one just to stop them getting it, but to position your team to be able to get it. So maximize your experience, understand that you need to sequence and rotate to fights a lot more often, direct your ganks much more around your level 6 spikes. If you need to cross from objective to objective to get that, you can now. If you need to go and flow for fights instead of falling back to your camps, yeah, we're gonna do that now. The payoff will be a maximized experienced jungler with a strong amount of gold, able to really fight and position for an Atakan snack that gives you the freest power to control and win in endgames you've ever seen. Being a jungle god, however, requires the best champions as well. Click the video on your screen now to learn about the meta.